So good afternoon, everybody. So how are you enjoying JNUC? Seems some interesting things? Cool. Awesome. I love it. Right? First day. Excited. Yeah, you can see the title. Jeremy, Ben, and Anthony will have some interesting story about their setup on Slack Workflows. If you have any questions, you can put it in the app, and later on we can ask them. So warm welcome for Jeremy.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I know we're kind of at the end of the day, energy levels are kind of dropping low, but hopefully this is nice and entertaining, a little bit of fun. Might have some pop quiz at the end, maybe some prizes to give out, so we'll try to keep it a little entertaining for you as we go through. My name is Jeremy Wilson Herman. I'm the head of IT and security for the Trevor project. I use he, him pronouns. Also presenting with me today is Ben Busaith and Anthony Bonarigo. They'll introduce themselves when they come up here in just a bit. Did want to give you just a moment to understand what is the Trevor Project, why are we here, what do we do? So the Trevor Project is the world's leading crisis intervention service provider for LGBTQ youth. We have a hotline where you can call, text, chat if you're in need of our support. We also participate in the 988 program for the Federal Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you call the 988 hotline, select the option for LGBTQ, you'll get routed to us for those support services. In addition to our crisis intervention services, we also have public education, peer support, research, and advocacy. And these are all services that are geared at preventing people from ever needing to call us for crisis intervention. We do this by trying to influence the good legislation, supporting that, getting that pushed through, preventing the bad legislation, stopping that from coming through. We are the first organization that partnered with New York City Public Schools to provide as an external partner to provide public education to students of the New York City Public School system, as well as their educators to help support their diverse students. Our research team also puts together peer-reviewed, published scholarly articles that can be cited by other researchers who are advancing work in this field. And that's who we are, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Jazz Shrimp, what Jazz Shrimp is, what it does, how we did it, and what the results were. In short, yes, there was a problem, but Jazz Shrimp solved it. Our team is hooked, and the shrimp keeps evolving. And I'm going to cover the really easy part of this, and that is, yes, there was a problem. And what was the problem? It's the problem that we've all probably had before. As the Trevor Project grew, we got more employees, more applications, more services, and obviously a lot more IT staff, right? No more IT staff. Just more employees and more applications. And so we were supporting more and more, and we had less and less resources to do it. And so we had to figure out, how do we fix this? And we fix that through process automation, obviously. That's really the only way you can go about doing that. And our process automation is centralized in a tool that we developed called Jazz Shrimp. Jazz Shrimp is our custom Slack application. It utilizes Okta Workflows, it utilizes Slack, it integrates with Jamf, it integrates with Google Workspace, and a bunch of other items to all work together in harmony to automate our workflows for simpler, easier processes. And coming up next is going to be Anthony Bonarigo. He's going to tell you more about how we did it and how it's working for us.
All right, thank you, Jeremy, appreciate it. All right, so real quick, how many people are attending the session because of the name Jazz Shrimp? Cool, yeah, and that's awesome. Really quick, just in short, Jazz Shrimp was just a Slack emoji that we found. We really just liked it. So just as like a quick aside on the origins of Jazz Shrimp, but as Jeremy mentioned, at its heart, Jazz Shrimp is a custom Slack application. A big theme that we heard about at the keynote this year was doing more with less, and that is exactly what we are doing with Jazz Shrimp. So as you can see, it utilizes multiple APIs, including Jamf, Okta, Slack, Zoom, LastPass, a lot of common tools that we find at a lot of orgs. Really, the intent of this is that we are doing all of these things within a trust Slack-based environment, we are eliminating the need for a lot of admins in our systems, doing things efficiently, all from Slack, so on any platform. It's also a term that we use internally to refer to a lot of different types of business automation. We just like JetShrimp. It's really caught on with the team and with the rest of the org, so it's really, really interesting to see how it's grown, and now we're here talking about it, so that's been very fun. So JetShrimp is split into 4 main parts, essentially. 2 of which are custom connectors that we have built in Okta Workflows. One that extends our use of the Slack API. We essentially use this to draw the user interface for JetShrimp to allow our help desk agents and our infrastructure team to interact with it. The second is that we have extended the use of Jamf Pro's API to allow us to authenticate calls to Jamf's API. More on all this later. It is also a Slack app, and in this context, a Slack app means a custom Slack application that we have made in our Slack workspace. And lastly, other custom connectors as needed for all sorts of various things that we end up doing with JetShrimp. So just real quick, here is a little showcase of how we use JetShrimp to, for example, lock laptops. Essentially, a user is going to click on JetShrimp in Slack. Again, mobile, desktop, doesn't matter. Select the lock laptop option. They're going to select a user within our Slack workspace. In this case, unfortunately, Donna Summers having her laptops locked. And then they're going to submit it. This has been really, really useful for us in a org that is completely remote. Unfortunately, lost or stolen laptops is something that, as we all work remotely, it's something that unfortunately happens more and more often. So this is a really, really awesome way to be able to handle this from anywhere that our employees are. Lastly, as you can see, it reports back to Slack saying, hey, this person on our team has initiated locks to a laptop. It will then recursively lock any laptop assigned to that user and report back with the lock codes, assuming that an approved member of our team reacts to the Slack message with the lock emoji. That's something we see a lot with using JetShrimp, is that it does have an approval process essentially built into it to make sure that only allowed privileged users are requesting these actions. And you can do it from anywhere they're working. We primarily use Slack, so that is our tool of choice for implementing these tools. So why Okta Workflows? Just really quick. So we already have it, essentially. Again, I was mentioning we do more with less by using JetShrimp. Okta Workflows is something that already exists in our environment. It's no code or low code. Having some level of knowledge about programming is really going to be helpful, but any of our employees that have knowledge of APIs is going to be able to maintain, add things to it, expand the use of it, keep it efficient, without the need to set up VCS, code reviews, development environments, Git, anything like that. So I'm not going to go through details of all of these, but I just wanted to provide a few examples of how we are using Okta Workflows to do some of these actions. This one is going to be a little less relevant. Recently, Jamf and Okta released their newest version of the Jamf Pro connector, in which a lot of these steps are thankfully built in for you. But essentially, we're using basic authorization calls to return bearer tokens to then use it to authenticate more requests to the Jamf API. Secondly, we are using this workflow, which is going to allow us to flush policy logs without having an agent or admin log into the Jamf console and manually flush policy logs for repeatable tasks. For example, pushing out admin accounts, doing software updates, things of that nature. You know, what ends up happening a lot is that you have to go sign it to Jamf, find the policy you want to rerun. It's already rerun for someone, so you have to flush their device manually. So this takes care of that for you. So JetShrimp follows this basic workflow. First, the user is going to invoke the app via Slack, via a shortcut. It's checking internally that that user is actually approved to use it. In this context, that just means that their Slack ID matches a user from our IT team. If they do, then JetShrimp is going to draw its UI. Again, this is all just happening within Okta Workflows. APIs are going to talk back and forth between Jamf and Slack and Okta. Included in those JSON payloads are metadata keys. Those are supported in Slack's API, which allows us to submit details back to Okta Workflows on who the user that is invoking, what action they've selected, and the target of their action, generally a user within Slack. Third, it's going to allow the user to submit their input. And then lastly, the action is going to be handled via a final JSON payload back to Okta Workflows with all the relevant information. And so just a few more examples here of how we are doing these steps. So firstly, we're using compose cards. This is just Slack's UI. You can do this within Block Kit Builder with Slack. We're using our custom Slack API connector that is going to actually draw the UI. And then lastly, we use a close card. Slack's API mandates a 3-second response time, so that's why you include that close card there. Little pro tip about those is that those cards require that you include a connector, and that's actually not the case. You don't have to put anything there. It'll yell at you, but yeah, you don't actually have to include anything, which is really nice. Secondly, we're going to collect the action or the target. So in this case, essentially all this is doing is we are pulling out the information from the webhook that's coming into Okta Workflows, grabbing all of the relevant UI data, and the action that the user selected. And then finally, on the final pass, what this is doing is, once again, just parsing out all the relevant information that we send in, breaking it down into the target, the action that was selected, and the invoking user, and then finally process that action entirely separately. As I was mentioning, the Slack API allows for these metadata tags, which is how we're keeping track of all of this. So a couple real-world examples. So, for example, something that I'm sure many of us are very used to, provisioning and deprovisioning admin access to a user's device. You want to make sure that these admin accounts, when they are provisioned, are actually removed, that this user doesn't just have persistent access, elevated access to their devices. So the way that we're doing this, we have essentially a set of static groups within Jamf. Via Jamf, we are adding these users to a static group that allows their device to install an admin account. This policy then is going to run via a normal Jamf check-in. We have a timer that's going to wait and then finally remove that user from that group, de-scoping them from the admin account. The final step is that we are going to add them to one more group that is scoped to delete this account from their machine. And then finally, at the very end, the policy is going to flush itself via the API. So if we ever need to run this again for any reason, we don't have to go into Jamf's console and flush these computers and policies manually. It just takes care of all of it for us. So this is what this looks like to our users. A user in IT is going to select this action, deploy temp admin account. They get the details on the action they're performing, letting them know that in 1 hour this command is going to expire. They're going to submit that, and they will get a approval, again, with our reporting Slack channel that we have dedicated to this function. So this is how we're doing this. Via Okta Workflows, we are, again, adding the user to a static group within Jamf. We are reading the details of that computer via their device ID, and then sending this back to our Slack channel, letting us know that, hey, this has run for a user. This is the information on the device and on the user that invoked it. We are, again, waiting for an hour. After an hour, we are going to pull this account off the computer. We instruct our help desk folks to make sure that they are using this with a user that they are actively working with. It's going to remove the user from that static group, and then lastly, add them to an additional static group that is scoped to remove that account. And then finally, the last step, assuming that all of this completed successfully, we have a positive status code return, and our custom Jamf connector is going to automatically flush the policies logs. And this is what is sent back to Slack, letting us know that Donna Summers' MacBook has been added to the temp admin group, and this expires after 1 hour. All right, so just a couple more use cases. We are an Okta organization, especially for folks that are on Classic Engine. Device trust is something that all the time we are getting tickets on this, especially after hours requests. We use JazzShrimp to completely repair and deploy device trust from a device. Similarly as before, we are going to select that action. The user is informed that this is going to enroll devices into Okta Device Trust. It's going to select a user within Slack and then submit. And again, this is just an example of how we're deploying this. So we are going to add them similarly to a static group that is scoped to run these policies. It's going to wait 24 hours. In this case, this is a little bit of a less sensitive task, so we're not keeping it to an hour, and then they are automatically removed. Policies are flushed, and if we ever need to run that again, we can do that. Similarly here, we're waiting 24 hours instead of that 1 hour. We're removing that computer from our static group and then flushing the policy logs. And here we see that JazzShrimp has reported back to us that I, as the invoker, have assigned Donna Summer to have Okta Device Trust enrolled for them. You can see that we've omitted any sensitive information, but you can see that we report back with the link to the group so we can see all devices that are scoped to these policies. And then lastly, we just wanted to highlight some additional use cases and other things that we're doing with JazzShrimp. So we have a suggestion box. Any of our users, suppose we really want something automated within our teams. A user can submit this along with a comment explaining why this would be awesome to have, and with a 1 to 5 rating system, just saying, hey, this is how much this is going to improve my life. All this information is going to be sent back to Okta Workflows and then uploaded to an Asana project that tracks all of these tasks for us. The user can then follow that task as a requester if they want. Next, we have the ability to delegate email inboxes. So this is another common request that we get. You can delegate any inbox within Google Workspace via JazzShrimp. The ability to thank the shrimp. So JazzShrimp listens to any message that you tag it. So as long as it includes the word thank, JazzShrimp knows that they are possibly being thanked, and they will report back on how many times they have been thanked. At the time of writing, they were only at 13, but this number has definitely gone up over the last few months. Software updates. So if you are subscribed to patch notifications within Jamf Pro, you can use a Jamf webhook to send that event back to Okta Workflows, and then parse it out into something like this, where, hey, you have an app in your environment that has an update available. Depending on how you're managing app updates, that's a separate thing, of course, but including a link to the actual patch report so you can easily see, hey, this app is updated, and at a glance you can see how many of your users have already done this update. Similarly, OS upgrades. So we use Erase Install, a very popular community tool for doing OS upgrades. In a similar fashion, you can use a webhook for when policies are completed in Jamf, send it back, include the information on the version of macOS that the user is now on, their device name, who that device is assigned to, all of that good stuff. Lastly, remediating employee lifecycle actions. So suppose that you have a person that is onboarding or offboarding. In this case, we have a user that is offboarding. We transfer the contents of their Google Drive to their manager or someone else. We see that it has failed. Thankfully, we are able to react with a Google Drive emoji to that failure notification. JazzShrimp automatically handles retrying the transfer, and we can see that it finally completed. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Ben Butzes, who's going to discuss a bit more about how this has impacted our team.
Thanks, Anthony. My name's Ben Butzes. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the IT infrastructure manager over the system admin team that Anthony's on, as well as our InfoSec team. So I want to ask all of you real quick, how many of you are really great or perfect at writing documentation about everything you do? I will not raise my hand to that. Let me rephrase it. How many of you are pretty good at writing documentation? A couple of you, you're better employees than I am, because I am terrible at writing documentation. Because JashShrimp, technically speaking, it's not a novel idea. The end result of taking an action on a laptop could be done through the user interface of the Jamf admin portal. If we had really great documentation about all of our processes of how to reinstate a certificate in Keychain with Okta Device Trust, how do we reset someone's password or MFA, how do we delegate a Google inbox? If we had documentation around all of that, we could just give that to our help desk employees and they'd be able to solve all of that for them. But we don't quite often have that documentation. And some of the documentation for some of these actions are going to be really lengthy. Sometimes you have to install, dependencies. Sometimes you have to check for updates in certain areas or certain apps. Maybe there's different tips and tricks that you need to remind them of. And now all of a sudden that easy task is now 30 different steps, and people are going to get lost and not be successful in that. So JashShrimp is solving a process issue for us, where we want to enable our less experienced admins or our help desk, our tier 1 triage support, to be able to take these complex actions in a secure environment where they're not going to get lost, they're not going to make a mistake, they're not going to end up having to wipe the device because they did something wrong. Instead, they just go to Slack, click on JashShrimp, click on these tasks, and it's done. Whatever they need to have happen is going to be successfully accomplished. So we're limiting access to key functions. We don't need to give each of our help desk or triage employees super admin access to everything, because JashShrimp has that access where it's needed. And depending on what level and what trust we give to our help desk agents, they will then be able to take specific actions within JashShrimp. And because of all of these processes, we're able to, and you would be able to build similar things in whatever software you have. Our business process was that we work out of Slack a ton. All of our messages, our communications, we get tickets in through Zendesk, but most of the time we just pivot, Slack the person, and say, hey, what else can we do to help you, and handle the conversation there. So if we wanted, we could remove Slack out of the situation and plop in Zendesk, and all of these same tasks with limited varieties would be able to happen within Zendesk, or Atlassian Jira, or Asana. This is just the platforms that we're using to be able to support this process need. We can ensure compliance. Those documentations need approval sometimes. They may have the ability to take an action right off the bat, but we want to make sure that a more senior member gives it approval first. Maybe it's going to be granting somebody a license or giving them unfettered access to an inbox. We need to make sure that a couple managers give their thumbs up of approval first. That's a business process that, unless you have a tool like JashShrimp, somebody may give that and go outside of those standard operating procedures. We're reducing training and onboarding time. We're making sure that these people can get up and going with a user interface that's simple and easy to use. Basically, everybody knows how to use Slack nowadays. And right from day one, we have people on our help desk and triaging teams solving advanced complex issues within our different systems without additional training needed. Works across multiple systems, and we have logging and reporting access. In just a few slides, I'm going to talk about where we're adding on to JashShrimp, but right from the get-go, we have an entire Slack channel that we call Tech Ops Robots, with a little parentheses, do not talk in here, just for robots. And it has all of the different logs and reports and actions that JashShrimp is taking. So we can see if there's anything erroring out, we can see if there's any changes that are being made, if people are taking commands or actions when they shouldn't be, we can keep an eye on it in a platform that we are frequently in. And then we can just do more with less resources. Everybody's using those buzzwords right now. They probably have been in IT for about 20 years. Do you thrive in a high-paced, highly changing environment? Do you like doing more with less? Do you like not having the resources that you need? No, we don't, but we will take it anyways. And JashShrimp is helping us solve that. And one of the reasons that we chose to go with JashShrimp is because of who our customers was. As a more senior system admin team, we have three customers. One of our customers is our help desk and triaging team that I've talked about. Another one of our customers is every single employee that we serve, that we support. They need things to happen within their time frame, and we need to be able to do what we can to support that. As a nonprofit, as the Trevor Project, we also have a third customer, all of our volunteers. At any one time, we have up to 60,000 documented volunteers in our roster. At any one time, 5,000 to 8,000 of them could be actively taking calls and chats and helping our youth that are in crisis. We have 700 employees that also need this support. And our help desk team, our triaging team, is 8. That number doesn't quite equate up to that 60,000 number or that 5,000 number. Maybe we're getting close with the 700 employees. But then look at our system admin team. We have 2. And we're doing really great. Not only are we just doing more with less, we're doing more with more. We are building tools that are empowering people to take actions for themselves. We are building things in JashShrimp so that they can, inherently do their job without having to go through a whole bunch of red tape, without having to ask for additional access. We are building a safeguarded and essentially help desk on Rails with this tool, where any action that has APIs that can be accomplished, we can put that into JashShrimp and we can automate it. We can have a little pop-up in Slack happen where even people can't mistype emails because it's looking in the Slack directory at who these people are. We're able to set up even more guardrails where maybe this person doesn't need full, password reset access to the entire organization. Maybe they're just doing volunteers. JashShrimp enables us to give that direct admin access to reset passwords just to volunteers, just to one section of the volunteers or one cohort or even one on-call thing. We can limit this down to anything we want because of JashShrimp and because of these API actions through Okta Workflows. And the shrimp keeps evolving. Looking into the future, we have a handful of ideas that we already have thanks to that suggestion box, but also past that. One of them is password shrimp. We are actively updating our password policy in our organization to comply with NIST standards. Usually, if I need to reset 700 people's passwords, I've got to have ideas about the calendar. Okay, we're a 24/7 nonprofit. I need to think about who's going to be on shift. Are they working the evening? Calendar starts getting really complicated. But with JashShrimp, we are able to empower each individual person to reset their own password in the correct way, so that way their password doesn't get out of sync with their local account, so their file vault doesn't kick them out, so they don't get locked out of their managed iCloud account. We're able to use JashShrimp to automate the password expiration on the time of the employee and make sure that it stays in sync and that Jamf doesn't break on their device the entire process. So that way we don't get a midnight ticket that's alerting my phone and waking me up. Another one is calendar shrimp. Back to those processes, we have a lot of things that, okay, I need to remember to do something in an hour, in 30 days. Okay, this certificate's gonna expire in 90 days. Oh, I'm giving someone delegated email inbox for 2 weeks. There's a lot of different dates and times that, unless I put it on my own calendar, I'm totally gonna forget. The employee's not gonna remind me, and it's just never gonna be undone, and that access is just gonna be out there. But with Calendar Shrimp, we're going to be able to have a dedicated Google Calendar that's attached to JashShrimp, where every morning at whatever time, they run an API call. JashShrimp says, oh, I have these 4 things. And it could either create a Zendesk ticket, it could create an Atlassian Jira ticket, it could automatically email the guests of that event saying, hey, your email inbox delegation is going to expire at this time. Please reply yes or no if you still need that access. If you do still need it, here's how the process works. All automated. Another one is fish shrimp. We're going to be able to create tasks based off of phishing reports, based off of people submitting things through their inbox saying that this is, potential phishing attack. And we're also going to be able to do, similar to the password shrimp, MFA shrimp, adjust people's MFA options. They lost their phone, they need to reset it, they need to set up a new UB key, 502, Touch ID is broken, whatever it is, we're able to start taking actions directly through JashShrimp and have it affect the user in a timely manner. And a lot of these things are kind of reactive. It takes someone on the IT team to start the action, or it takes the employee themselves to submit a ticket to start an action. Even further past just these handful of ideas, we're thinking of much more reactive things, or pardon me, we're looking for more things that are proactive. We're looking for ways that JashShrimp can activate itself and go take actions. If it sees that a policy error, shows up in the Jamf dashboard, JashShrimp's going to be able to automatically remediate that itself and notify us that, hey, I've noticed this, I'm taking this action, here's a couple links to the admin dashboard of why JashShrimp's activating itself. With these proactive things, JashRimp is going to enable us to continue to do more with less, continue to support our volunteers, continue to support our employees when they need that support with the teams that we have. Now, I invite the rest of my team to come back up, because as you can see, we have little plushies on our stage.
So everyone was taking phenomenal notes, right? Because you may have noticed at the front of the stage, there are 5 little jazz shrimps. They could be yours. There are 5 questions. And because there are a number of you out there, I'm just going to ask that we do hands, and we'll call on the first hand that we see, and we'll try to be as fair about it as we can. The first question that we have, what are 2 areas of service that the Trevor project specializes in? 2 things that we do. Back in the back.
Crisis intervention and policy.
You have a shrimp. Yeah, What are 2 systems that Jazz Shrimp currently integrates with? You were very quick to the take there, sir. Okta and Slack
Okta
sounds
and Slack,
great.
yeah.
Thank you. Any shrimp. It can be your favorite shrimp. What is one benefit of using Jazz Shrimp over the native GUI? I think I saw your hand real quick.
You guys use Slack all the time?
We use Slack all the time. Absolutely. It's right where we need to be. We don't have to go anywhere else. What is one trick, we call them tricks, what is one trick that Jazz Shrimp can perform that utilizes Jamf? This is level 2, it has to utilize Jamf. I think I saw your hand first. Device lockouts, absolutely. So we're gonna give 2 options on the last question because we recognize that I'm old and some of my pop culture references might not so much be popular culture anymore. But what song inspired our presentation? We'll start with that one. Anyone know what song inspired the presentation? Yes, there was a problem, but Jazz Shrimp solved it. The team is hooked, the shrimp keeps evolving. Ice, Ice
There
Baby.
it is.
Thank you very much.
There it is.
Come have a shrimp. Everyone, you've been awesome. I hope you got a lot out of this. We do have some time for some questions. I think we're going to have our facilitator here help us out with what those questions might be.
I have the mic, so if anybody have a question, please raise your hand, and then I will come to you. And come on, don't be shy. Here we go.
Is this deck going to be shared after this?
I hope so.
Yes, this is being
We hope
recorded.
so.
Yep. This is being recorded through JNUC, and if you are an Okta user yourself and you are either looking at Okta Workflows or already use it, we can provide you with an Okta Workflows export afterwards. Hit us up, add us on LinkedIn. There's a collab.
Yeah, add us on LinkedIn.
least
Both,
one.
I don't know about Jeremy, but both Ben and I for sure are over on the Mac Admins workspace, so feel free to reach
That
out
too.
to us and we'll get you any of this information. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're in the speaker directory as well, so you can reach out to us through all of that contact information as well.
And to hop into that, there's also an online question saying, like, is this workflow also available in a blog post? So if you don't, that's
We
a
don't
nice
have a blog post, no, but
It's a good
Yeah, but that
suggestion.
said, yeah,
Yeah.
reach out to us on Mac Admins, LinkedIn, whatever. We'll get them to you for sure.
Yep.
Yep.
yes.
In your opinion, how would there be other systems besides like Okta that you could swap out with?
Yes, I'm very opinionated, but you could use platforms such as Workato with varying levels of success. You could use Zapier, Rippling, which is a new HR that's coming out into this, an HRIS that's coming out. It has an orchestration tool or an automation tool. If you have your own low-code, no-code orchestration tool of your own flavor, that will, succeed, and you will be able to build that out in it. Workato, Rippling, Zapier, or you could just code this within Python or C++. I don't develop, so that could be awkward, but You could code this, throw it up in an AWS instance or something like that, but we literally have not written a single line of code. It's all been within Okta Workflows, the built-in Slack app builder, and then Jamf's endpoint APIs.
Yeah, all you really need is something that takes inputs and gives outputs. And then it's just a matter of building the translation pieces between the different systems.
So a couple of more here on the online. Is there a wiki for this?
There isn't a wiki. This is all in-house, custom built.
That's an interesting idea, though.
That is interesting, yeah. Maybe
Talking
put it up
about
on GitHub.
documentation, right?
Yes,
You're
that's
the bad
true.
guys.
Yeah, it's so bad at that, yeah.
And
It is quite paradoxical, the whole chicken and the egg thing. Like, if we had the documentation, we wouldn't need the jazz shrimp, but now that we have the jazz shrimp,
Who needs
the
documentation?
documentation would be great to help other people out. But yeah, I think, you know, we're still figuring out what's next for jazz shrimp. There might be some, you know, more public-facing aspects to this that we explore down the line. In the meantime, though, I'll just reiterate what everyone else has said. Like, reach out to us. We are not keeping this like secret or under wraps. We have no like stake in it. We're happy to help with anyone who wants to reach out.
Cool, cool. For the counter, you got 2 fake queues for jazz shrimp, so you can add that up.
Yeah,
Yep.
we will. I will go into Slack on my phone right after this, and we'll thank Jazz
Jazz
Shrimp
Shrimp
on behalf
twice.
of JNUC.
Other question, nobody here. So the other question online is, what actually manages the security model of the rights for various tricks? Is it within the Okta Workflows?
So Anthony, you
Yeah.
can cover it.
So basically, any user can within Slack see that Jazz Shrimp button. However, if they're not a member of the IT team, we track that via Slack IDs. So the Slack ID of the person actually invoking the app has to match someone on our team to actually get any type of response from Jazz Shrimp.
And we actually take that a second level as well. Even if you make a request, if you try to react with the approval emoji, but you're not on the other list of Slack IDs that have approval permissions, then it won't acknowledge that approval as well. And I
Yep.
know this from personal experience because it took Anthony about a month to put me on the approvers list.
That's true.
So I would
That's
just
true.
keep reacting to things and nothing would ever happen. I think we had one question back here.
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part. Well, what if their Slack's broken? But number two, is it because Slack kind of has a long-lasting device access token, right? So even if the password's messed up, they can still get in Slack that secret to the system.
That is part of it. With Okta, we use single sign-on for Slack, so it's using SAML authentication to get in. And those session tokens usually last 7 days or so. We can set that whatever we want, but we have it pretty wide so that way people don't get kicked out while they're going. So it's an active session, so that way hopefully they can get in. But if they can't even get into Slack, I don't know how they submitted the ticket in the first place. So they probably texted or called us.
Yeah, I think that's a point of failure that no matter what you pick, you're going to run up against it. So we have backup points of contact as well. They can email, they can have their manager reach out to us. We have a PagerDuty integration that they can use if it's an emergency. So unfortunately, there is no single point that can't fail. So you have to build that in a little bit.
Cool. Another online question. Do you find that Jazz Shrimp slows a help desk tech professional development since it's essential holds their hands? Or do you find that Jazz Shrimp clears up representative easy things to allow the help desk tech to troubleshoot more advanced issues?
I think it's 100. Sorry, I'm going to jump
Go
in on
for
that
it,
one.
yeah.
I think it's 100% the latter one. So, I've been in a number of organizations, and onboarding tech folks is always an extremely long process that does not create a lot of value for people. Most people know why you would reset a password. They know the high-level concepts of how to reset a password. They just don't know how to do it in your organization. What this does is it gets them up and running faster so that they can be in the real-world environment, contributing to the organization, and it frees them up to have time to explore those more advanced professional development options that will help them build their career in the long run.
I'll add, I understand that it could be a double-edged sword. Having that IT on rails, If their script doesn't match all of the things that they're saying, they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I can't use Jashrimp because they didn't answer my questions right. So that could be. But with the culture that we're fostering as a team, coming down from the leadership, we're making sure to enable not only the use of Jashrimp, but also the use of their personal development, helping them professionally develop in IT, whether it is automation or development, system administration. Jashrimp isn't a hidden thing. We frequently show people the Okta Workflows on our triaging team. This is why Jashrimp is working. If you see these errors, these are the actual points where it's breaking. And here's how you can just log into Okta, log into Jamf to double check on things also. So our culture is also helping ensure that it's the latter.
I think one last thing I would add to that question is we approach Jashrimp, and we have from the beginning, as a opportunity to solve pain points. It's not to avoid training per se, it's to make things easier for people. So a lot of the really great tricks that Jashrimp has learned have come from suggestions from those frontline triage staff, because they're the ones who are in it, they're the ones who are experiencing the pain points, and so they have come up with some of the greatest ideas for tricks for Jashrimp along the way.
Cool. I got one more in the online. So how do you comply with SOC and other audit compliancy? Or does the Okta Workflow stores all the information for CISO?
Yeah, so I'll do a really high level, and then you guys can build on it if you want. But so we have built-in logging through Slack. So we have our Slack channel where all actions are logged, and it logs not only the action itself, but who requested it, who approved it, when it was completed, what actual actions were taken, did it fail. We have the logging that comes within Okta and Jamf and all of these tools natively. And we're also in the progress of building out our SIEM solution where we will aggregate all of this data into a single source of truth that we can audit and report on as needed.
Yep. Since we are a full remote organization, we're a cloud-first organization as well. We don't have any legacy servers that we have spun up. Everything is completely SaaS-based. And so because of that, we don't have to worry about patch management of Okta. We pay them to do that. We don't have to worry about vulnerabilities in the code that we write because it's in Okta Workflows or Slack or Jamf, and they have to do it because we're paying them for it. And so there's a lot of these different pieces that help us build that framework to be SOC compliant, to be FedRAMP compliant in all these different ways. And that new SIEM solution is going to be able to bring it all together to help generate that documentation to prove it.
Great, thank you.
So that's a great question. The question was, how many Okta Workflows is this? Fewer than you'd think. The actual brunt of what Jashrimp is doing, each individual action is processed in its own workflow. I mean, that's really only like, at this time, 7 or 8. The actual big pieces, all the authentication, writing the entire UI, all of those things is 2.
And I think a really important point here, and this isn't necessarily specific to Okta Workflows, but it is certainly true of Okta Workflows, is that those big pieces are not just low code, no code, but they're reusable code. And so that in and of itself, pays for itself.
Well, by that, thank you very much.
Yeah,
it was
thank you.
very
Thank you
good.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
And enjoy Janak.